All right, welcome to Hope in Darkness. This is our first real attempt at a live video. I'm Becky Bruce, and you're also listening to Josh Holt, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck I am doing with the screen. Josh, bear with me. New technology, right?
That's right.
Okay, I think I got it under control. There we go. Hi, good to see your face.
You too. Well, coronavirus, I don't get to see you ever.
I know, right? It's been super strange being remote after we spent so much time recording and putting the podcast together.
Yeah, crazy.
So this is our second Q&A video.
Yep.
And in the first one, we talked about episodes 1 and 2, but we now have 2 more episodes to talk about.
That's right.
So I thought maybe we should start by talking about episode 3. What do you say?
It sounds good to me.
All right. Key part of episode 3 was a video that involved a Venezuelan government official painting you as basically a spy. What did you think about when you heard that?
So his name is Diosdado Cabello, and he is really known for being corrupt and also being a drug lord. His show is basically a type of show where he gets all these different types of news around the world that is basically people publishing stuff that is bad about Venezuela, and he puts it on a show and they laugh about it. They say big stuff just like, man, how crazy is this? Why would they think this? That type of stuff. But really what it's showing is that they know what other people outside of Venezuela are seeing, and they kind of want to jump around it by just laughing at it and thinking, oh, this can't be true. And so when I was on there every month or, multiple times within, the couple of years that I was there, it was always a big deal because it means that the government of Venezuela, their sight, their scope was pointed right at me. Yeah. So something important or something big was happening for them to do that.
And so one of the things that has really struck me in the couple of weeks now since we launched the podcast is we do have a few Venezuelans who've reached out to us and who legit think that you were a spy, in part because that show was on kind of regularly painting this picture of you. So if you could say anything to those folks right now, what would you say?
Look at the facts. That's all I would say. But then at the same time, I wouldn't blame them because there are a lot of people even here. In fact, I was doing an interview yesterday with Richie, and he said, now, hold on, don't jump to conclusions, but to tell you the truth, at the very beginning of you being over there and listening to your mom cry and beg the people here in the United States to help her get you home and talk about this gun and all that, my first reaction was, well, maybe he had a gun. Maybe he was doing bad things over there, because the story is just so far out there that it's hard, especially for us Americans, to believe that something like that could actually be true, that something like that could actually happen. Why would a government take away someone's, due process? Why would they defile their human rights? It's just not something that we can really wrap our minds around.
Yeah. And by the same token, we found out as part of the research that we did for episode 3, talking to some Venezuelan experts, that part of the reason it was so believable for a lot of people is because Americans have intervened in South America kind of a lot in the past. So I don't think that helped. I think that probably created an environment in which they could paint that picture of you as a spy and make it look more real, even though the facts didn't support it.
Yeah. And even with the fact that I had videos of me shooting here in Utah, that didn't help the situation. And when I got home later, my dad just kind of laughed at me saying, why would you even go over there with videos and pictures on your phone like that and your concealed weapons permit? And I said, well, pump the brakes. I understand the concealed weapons permit. Like, I didn't need to take that, across the sea. But I really wasn't thinking about pictures in my phone. Like, why would you think that you need to be worried about what type of pictures you have in your phone? So I think for all of you that are listening, maybe you should put that on the checklist of, hey, maybe I should clean up my phone and put some stuff on my hard drive before I go to these crazy places that I'm going to go, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid point. I've been overseas a couple of times myself. I have not been to Venezuela. I would love to go someday, but I also
Becky,
don't want
don't
to get
say
arrested.
that.
I know. One day.
After everything you've
Yeah,
learned.
honestly, my hope is that one day Venezuela is free enough that it is a
Yeah.
place that we can safely visit again, because I think it's a beautiful country with beautiful people who deserve better than they're getting, right?
Yeah, that's 100% true.
I would never have thought to clean out my phone before I went to, say, Mexico on a cruise,
Yeah.
right? And
But
and now that I know
you
this
might
story,
think of it, right?
yeah, now I'm thinking about it. All right. Well, we were given the opportunity to talk to my friend Rebecca Cressman on FM 100. She has a show every week called Utah Weekly Forum, and she asked a really good question that I thought I'd like to give you the chance to answer here. And what she wanted to know is what you thought happened, why they arrested you at the apartment complex the day that they arrested you. And I thought you had a really good answer for that.
Yeah, the reason I think that they arrested me was because there are people that were in Ciudad Carilla. And if we all remember, Ciudad Carilla is a city that was built by the government to support people that lost their houses through natural disasters and other reasons. Well, they had people that were basically moles, and they would get paid to tell the police officers information. Well, with me being the only American there, and maybe she saw me going from our apartment to the bus stop, that was something that she was able to tell to the Venezuelan government, saying, hey, I see this gringo over here. You might want to come check him out. And in that morning, if you remember correctly from the podcast, they were going door to door looking just for men. So, that kind of connects what my wife and I have heard, what Tammy and I have heard about what happened that morning. We know that there was a lot of people that were killed, a lot of people that were taken. And if you remember correctly as well, I also remember seeing that line just full of men. And so I believe that they wanted the gringo, and maybe their first reaction of wanting the gringo, the first thoughts were, maybe we can get money out of him. When they found out that they had no money, and then they saw my phone and they saw the videos, they figured, you know what, we're going to use this gringo as a tactic to scare the Venezuelan citizens into thinking that Americans are out for us, that they're bad people, that they're rich snobs, and that they're racist.
Yeah, and I think I told you at the time I had a slightly different theory, but we're pretty close together. My theory was that it wasn't so much planned way in advance. And I don't think I explained this very well to Rebecca. My theory was that the plan actually came about after that first raid. So the night that you saw all those cars coming down the mountain, I think they had just found out about you, that one of her neighbors had maybe ratted you out at that point. And they're like, okay, what can we do with this information? We have this guy. What can we do with this? So they spent that week in between digging up dirt. And part of the reason I think that is because of what you said when you were in the process of being arrested. Multiple times people would come up and would ask, who's he? And what did they say?
He's the gringo.
Ah, okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So some of the digging that I did in fact checking kind of all of this stuff, I found that one of the narratives that was put out there was that you supposedly used the gringo as your alias, that was like your secret name that you used, kind of like your friend Buñuelo. That's an alias for him, right?
Yeah.
I don't know which one's true. I think they're both entirely plausible. I think it's entirely possible that you're right and you could have been taken the week before. I think it's entirely possible that I'm right, and that's when they found out about you. Yeah. Either way, they built a narrative around you.
Yeah.
I think.
And right? We'll never know. We'll never know 100% what happened. We just know that they ended up using me in a negative way to try to benefit themselves and scare their citizens, because that's all they're about there, is scaring their citizens, making them suffer, taking away their human rights. We learn every single day more and more about things that are going down there and how people are suffering. So,
yeah. I wound up having the opportunity to interview our two professors for episode 3, but you didn't because you had to work. I'm curious, did you learn anything from listening that you didn't know?
Not really. It was all stuff that I've heard, especially being, locked up there for 2 years. You hear all the different stories about how things were made, especially El Helicoide. I knew that was going to be a shopping mall, and a lot of people talked to me about that. I learned a lot about how Venezuela was basically formed, how they divided into 4 different countries, and just a little bit of their background history. And so with that, and then also living the experience there in Venezuela, I knew a lot of the information that they were stating.
I noticed that your friend Quinn is actually watching us on Facebook. So if you want to say anything to Quinn, we could start talking about episode 4 if you want, because he comes up in that.
He does come up in that, and
all right.
He makes fun of us too,
doesn't he? A little bit. Well, you.
Same with episode 1. He was the little jerk that said you can't go and marry her in Venezuela, and same with his dad.
That's one of my favorite sound bites out of the entire series that we put together, was the exchange between you and Quinn talking about his dad saying, yeah, he's totally going to Venezuela and getting married.
Well,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say he's been a really great friend, and he's been there the entire time. He was always there to help my mom whenever she needed anything. So we're grateful for him for everything he's done.
Well, that's actually one of the questions I had on my list here was, before we talked to your friends, how much did you actually know about their experience while you were gone?
That was the first time actually listening to their experience, listening to their feelings, their thoughts, and how it affected their own lives. Because, as you know, Quinn and Caden, they're both married. They both have children, and they both have wives, and they would have to take time out of their own lives, whether it was after work or maybe during a lunch break or whatever it was, to try to help my family, try to help me. And that was a big burden. And it was hard for them to basically go to family reunions and go to other places where they think they're just going to go there to have a fun time. And then, hey, you're Josh's best friend, right? What's going on with him? And then here it is giving them bad news once again. It's like, well, I don't know anything. All I know is there was a court date once again, came, and it's gone. And so that was really difficult for them to have to live through. And as you know, and I can't remember if this was in the podcast, but just like Quinn said, I kind of hated Tammy for a little while there. I kind of hated her. And just to correct it, he loves her now. He has fun with her now, but yeah, it was a little hard.
Unfortunately, a lot of stuff wound up on the cutting room floor just for time. And that was one of those moments. I think we left in a little bit of Derek's kind of feelings about how he was coming out at her first. But I think Quinn and Caden's exchange about that wound up on the cutting room floor, which reminds me, though, that there's other stuff that wound up on the cutting room floor. One of those things is your buddy, Jason. And I felt really, really bad about that.
He wasn't in there at all.
I know. I feel terrible about that. It was just so hard to try and squeeze all of the detail in and also still tell the story. So I'm hoping you can get that in your book.
Yeah, would love to. I mean, we had over 24 hours of
something
recording?
Like that, between just recording you and then recording other people. Yeah, I think it was easily over 20 hours of material.
I even remember talking to Caleb McCary, which everyone will learn a lot about Caleb and his story and how he helped us out. But we talked to him for 40 minutes. And I remember after that, not only was I super distraught and had to take, 10 minutes to calm down, but I remember just thinking, Becky, how are you going to edit this?
Yeah, that was a tough one. That was a really tough one, which, spoiler alert, we'll get there. And I'm also pleased to see on Facebook, Kimberly Ward Dayton saying she just started listening last night and she wants to see a whole movie about your story. We'll see. We haven't been asked yet, but you never know. And Heidi Stone saying that she heard your mom pleading for your release on the radio and she's so glad that you made it home. So
well, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. Episode 4 begins with you heading to court, basically convinced that you're going to get your freedom. It's July 4th, 2016, and you've been interrogated for 5 days, kind of on end. You haven't been able to see your wife, and they load you up in this van, and you go to court, and you're like, you know what? They don't have a case. Yeah. Is that basically why you were so confident that you would get your freedom?
Yeah, and also because here, I mean, who hasn't watched CSI? I've watched plenty of CSI. And if those people can find all this different, stuff, evidence, fingerprints, I knew they weren't going to find any of that on me. And so I was like, I'm clear. I'm good to go. And not only just that, and this isn't in the podcast, but the people that were interviewing us, there were bad people and there were good people. And that's what the Sabine is full of. They're full of a lot of bad people and a little bit of good people. And there was one comisario, which is basically like a supervisor, a head supervisor. And he came to me and was talking to me. He said, I want to let you know that you and your wife are telling the exact same story. We've been going over this for multiple days now, and nothing's ever changed. We know that you're innocent, and we're going to do the best we can to get you out of here tomorrow. And I held on to that word so hard that I bet my heart was going to burst. I thought and felt that that was 100% true, that these people were going to basically go to the court saying, you know what, we didn't find anything. It was all just a misunderstanding, and they're going to let us go. But as we all know, that's not what happened.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, and we're going to get to that, I think, in the episode where we talk about your mom a lot more, is I didn't know until we talked to your dad that that guy had a connection to you because of the mission that you served in the state of Washington. And it was interesting to hear you kind of learn about that with your dad in real time as we were interviewing him. I don't think you knew that either.
I don't think it was him, because that guy that you were talking about, I remember being interviewed by that guy, and that guy was basically telling me, hey, if you don't shut up, Marco Rubio, who is a senator of Florida, if you don't keep him quiet, you're going to stay here forever. Those were his exact words. And I remember just getting back, and I was so angry, and I was like, these people are bad. And that's when I found out that that person that was interviewing me was actually one of the people that was trying to watch out for me. And so that's probably one of the reasons why he was actually there. I was thinking it was more of a Venezuelan government type of thing to basically just make me go to Senator Rubio and tell him to be quiet, which Senator Hatch did multiple times. But, he's got his own agenda, his own things that he was planning. But yeah, it wasn't the same guy that was telling me, but there could have been a connection. We never know.
Tons of little connections, I guess,
Yeah.
I was getting at that you wouldn't have expected to pay off. And it took 2 years, but they did, which I really love that we're going to get to learn more about that, because people will ask me, well, how did your freedom come about? And the answer is so complicated that it takes us 12 episodes to do it.
That's right. And slow. It was such a slow process.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff about that very first court appearance that wound up on the cutting room floor. So I hit a little bit of things about, that first holding cell that you wound up in, meeting your attorney for the first time, seeing the judge for the first time. But it feels like you and I talked for what probably was a couple of hours about what wound up being 10 minutes of an episode. Is there anything that you really wish you could have elaborated on?
I think they really got the gist of it. Now that I think about it, the only thing that really just sticks in my mind that I can't really get out of it is the way that judge looked at me. And I knew, especially now knowing her and knowing how corrupt she is, and what a terrible person she has been towards many people, not just me, she's just wicked. She is someone that is definitely bought by the government, and she was there to do the government's bidding. And that's exactly what she did.
Let me think about that first cell again. After you got done with the court hearing, after that horrible glare from the judge that kind of told you, oh, I'm not even a human being in her eyes. You go back to Sabine, to El Eloquide, and you wind up in this first cell. What's going through your mind when you see the place that's going to be your new home?
I'm just thinking, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe this is my cell. I can't even understand half the writing that's on the walls, because at this time, I've still only been back from my mission for around 6 months. And even though I've been able to talk to Tammy quite a bit, the slang in Venezuela is a lot different than the slang that I heard from Mexico. And so trying to read things on the wall, being just exhausted and dehydrated from how hot it was there, I just couldn't believe. But I always kept in my mind, I can do this. It's only going to be 45 days. Once again, I was holding on to that hope of, it's not going to last very long. And this is actually interesting. And I don't know if you know this, Becky, but there are actually 2 Americans that are being held in that very same jail right now. In that very same cell.
It's actually something that I've been very surprised that nobody's asked us about yet in all the interviews that we've been doing. You had a connection that I didn't know. Did one of their families reach out to you? Is that how that happened?
I have talked to their family.
The 2 Americans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
their conditions not very great. I've seen the video, especially on YouTube, and I'm not going to say a whole lot about it, especially their condition and what's going on with them in their case. But I think it's important for people to know that they're there. There is no embassy for the United States in Venezuela. They have no lawyer. They have no way to contact anyone. And as I know right now, they're going to jail and going to trial and have no one to help them. So hopefully something happens. Hopefully the government steps in and says, hey, this isn't right. But what we've seen from my case, I don't see it as something that will end anytime soon, sadly.
Okay, your dad is on Facebook, and I have no idea what he's talking about, so you're going to have to explain it to me. He says, talk about the cat.
Oh, that didn't make it in the podcast either. In my second cell, we actually had a cat that came into the cell during visit time. I don't know if it was someone that brought in a cat or if it just kind of, yeah, I don't know how to explain this to you. I mean, outside the cells, outside the walls, there were a lot of stray dogs and cats. But there was a little tiny kitten. It was just this little tiny ball kitten, and came into our cell, and we decided we were going to keep it, and we called her Rosita. And we had her for about a week before she disappeared one day at a visit. So I'm thinking she got out while we were probably sleeping or whatever. And she was a cute little thing, and so someone probably just took her home.
That is crazy. We're not even close to talking about the second cell yet in the podcast, so that's TBD.
Stay tuned.
A lot of crazy stuff that goes on there too. Why do you think they kept you separated from everybody else at first? Why do you think you were in solitary confinement?
That's what they do to a lot of people. I mean, they keep the lights on 24 hours. They're two really big lights, and they want to just break you. And that's what they were trying to do. And the people that aren't strong-willed, that's exactly what happens to them. They break, they fall apart, and they just give in to whatever it is that the civilian wants. But I knew I was innocent, and I wasn't going to give in to anything.
One question I do actually get sometimes, and kind of like our friend Richie when he asked you about, did you really have a weapon, is, well, was Josh really a spy? So
and what do I tell you? And what do I always tell you, Becky? There's always one little thing.
Check from the CIA yet?
That's right. I still haven't gotten that check.
All right. Anything else that you wanted to talk about from episodes 3 or 4 before we wrap it up here?
No, I don't think so. I think we've hit quite a bit of it.
All right. Well, really appreciate all of you who chimed in for us here on YouTube and Facebook. Robert Kemp and Bobby Hendricks Bryant, we saw you too. Other than that, if you haven't listened yet, we encourage you to go seek it out. Any podcast app will do it. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. If you'd like to listen to the whole thing and not have to wait, you can sign up at Stitcher Premium and use the promo code HOPE to get a month free. And any questions, if you want us to answer your questions on the next video, you can send those to us at hopeindarkness@ksl.com. All right, Josh, have a great night. It's good to see you.
Okay, thanks.
See ya.
See ya.